don't have a lot of time, such a large topic. My name is Chris Carr, nice to meet all you all. The topic for 10:30 is going to be Web 2.0, blockchain, IoT, and why diversity is still a struggle, right? This is not going to be a lecture. I'm not going to use PowerPoint. This is going to be a discussion. So if anyone is uncomfortable being recorded, we have a person videotaping. They will not be able to see you. If afterwards you're like, hey, I want to make sure, I want to look at it, I understand that. I really need honesty. So if you participate, please try your best to be as honest as you can with yourself. Don't worry about offending me. Keep in mind, we are humans. There are other humans in the room. So be honest, but also know that people have feelings, right? But this is not a topic that's well understood. A lot of people avoid discussing it, and I'm a person that likes to take it on, like, head on. So before we start, though, you may ask, who am I? You all get 3 questions to ask. I'm not going to give a bio. I'm not giving you any knowledge about what I've done or why you should believe me. You get to ask, and I'll tell you what I think is important. So what are 3 things you want to know about me before I give this presentation? Yes?
What are you passionate about?
Ooh, finding how I can contribute to the world in a positive way and still love what I'm doing.
What did you study and excel at?
Excel, tough for me. I know I have a skill set or talent, but it's not enough. There's always more to learn, more to grow. But I'm a medievalist. I went to grad school at Columbia University for medieval studies. My thesis dealt with the ideological construction of orthodoxy and heresy in the medieval time period, specifically looking at the relationship between the Catholic Church and the Franciscan order. And it's about power. Basically, how does hegemony function socially, and how does that work with morality and other social constructs? And interestingly enough, we're here talking about hegemony and social constructs. So when someone's like, why would you have a medieval? It still applies. One more question.
I want to hear about your accident, but we can talk about that later.
Which one?
The one for the disfigurement on the face.
Yeah, well, so the skin changes, I got diagnosed with melanoma in 2017. Got my pinky toe amputated. I was on immunotherapy for 13 months. I'm one of the luckiest people you ever met in your life. And part of the medication changed my skin. Teeth got knocked out from a bike accident 2 years prior to that. So I had 4 years of like, woo, this isn't fun. But through that, learned a whole lot. And when you ask what am I passionate about, being alive and loving every moment and loving the people in my life. Which is also why we're not going to BS in here. I have no time to waste. I don't want to waste your time, right? So on your desk, there's some questions. I'm going to do a very quick intro. I know we have a limited number of time. If everyone can just simultaneously yell out your name when I count to 3. And I won't be able to do it, but we also don't want to just sit here and act like it's not involved. All right? So on the count of 3, yell out your name. 1, 2, 3.
Sarah.
I heard something, Marco. Okay. You got to tell me. All right. So I will give you a little background. I work with blockchain companies. I work at a tech company. I've been doing DEI for about 15 years. I started out doing EEO and working with the university, doing Title VII, Title IX. At the time, there was sexual harassment, a big issue, and people that were tenured professors saying, I don't have to change anything. You can't fire me. And my mother's an attorney, and part of her job was going in and being like, you can't sexually harass these students, and we would figure out how to fire you if you keep doing it. And so it was an uphill battle from the get-go. So now in 2022, we're talking about tech. And as I've spoken to people here, they're like, you do diversity, but it's a blockchain conference. Why are you here? It's an interesting question. So, why is diversity such a struggle? I gave you all a piece of paper, right? One side of the paper, if you can, it's a blank piece of paper. That's going to be for us publicly. Yes. The other side, you can rip these in half. So you have 2 sides. The other side's anonymous. I won't know who you are. I want you to write down everything you disagree with. So when I say that the rate of diversity is as bad now in 1981 as it's as bad now as it was in 81, you don't believe that? Write it down.
It's as bad now as it was in 81.
Yeah, if I say, some people would say it's worse, yeah. All right, when you look at the number of tech firms available, the amount of money in the sphere, and how few women earn it, when you look at how few black people. If I give you statistics you don't believe me, write it down. And at the end of it, I'll collect that part, I won't know you wrote it. If I say, sexism is rampant in tech, and you're like, that's BS, write that down. I want to get an understanding of what people really think about this, okay? So first question, where do white people come from?
Africa.
Help me out. Were they called white people in Africa? Right? So where do white people come from? Throw a guess out. I'm not expecting you to be like a biological anthropologist.
Adam and Eve.
I mean, good start. I like that answer. Mesopotamia. Anybody else? Well, what happened so that my skin is darker and my hair is curly, and so that other people have fairer skin and straighter hair? Does anyone understand that?
Something called mutation,
Mutation, but
about 100,000 years ago.
so this can go on for about 10 minutes, and what we get to is actually there's no definition for whiteness, there's no definition for blackness, it's a social construct. When you think about the out of Africa theory, and we talk about evolution, there's an idea that, well, people became lighter due to lack of vitamin D, dietary things. People were darker due to the sun. Inuits and indigenous folks in Canada and Alaska been there how many tens of thousands of years, 100,000 years? They didn't lose their melanin, their hair didn't turn blonde. So we actually don't know how humans develop. So then when we talk about race, when we talk about identity, it's all a social construct. Now, much like God, I don't have to get into is it real or not, people believe it's real and they'll kill it. So this is why our topic is so difficult. Identity is a social construct, but people act like it's something concrete and will murder over it. Does this make
Can I
sense?
throw something?
Yeah.
Isn't it basically just tribalism? And whether the tribe is Republican, Democrat, race, ethnicity, sports teams, whatever it is, right? We kind of glob into tribes, and if you're not part of my tribe, all of a sudden now you become less human.
So that's a theory, and one of the things I was getting to is the notion that, well, humans automatically in-group, out-group. That's a sociological perspective that was developed by Europeans. Will the colonists ever tell you that colonialism is not normal? No, they'll say humans are inherently violent, humans in-group, out-group. Because you're different, I think you are not human. But that's not necessarily the case historically. If you look through numerous groups, and I won't get into like specific case studies, where they were very accepting of newcomers. Part of like how Americans have been able to survive in the new world is we got here and other people are like, we'll welcome you, we'll show you how to grow food, and even though you're different.
You know, to what Gerard said, that's still a tribal construct that tribe believes in embracing. It has grown up as a society to embrace strangers.
Could you give me a perspective of human dynamics that's not European based? That wasn't developed by a European or through a European university?
If I was educated as we have not been in this country and what's happening in Asia, probably yes.
So now we're at our next level of difficulty. How do we understand anything in the world outside of a colonizer point of view? As a black man, should I listen to any person explain to me how human psychology works that hasn't studied it from black people in Africa who didn't go to European universities? Does anyone allow the abuser to tell them who they are?
Well, hold on a second.
Now, but I only have 25 minutes, so this is why we have our 2 pieces of paper. We should write it down. But I purposely, because I have some other questions I want to get into. I'm purposely challenging this notion that anyone understands human dynamics, and that's one of the struggles when it comes to diversity, is that anytime I bring it up, people are like, there's a solution for this. And when I say, maybe we don't even understand who we are.
We don't understand where we came from, so how can we understand who we are?
Exactly. So, sorry, what were you going to say, sir?
Well, the issue of abuser, right? I mean, if you look back throughout all of human history, right, there have been abusers that have nothing to do with Europe. You didn't start with Europe.
The Chinese
Right.
were abused.
So now we're at the next step of why diversity doesn't happen. We are now going to have to focus on defending Europeanness instead of talking about
No.
See, I'm going to argue with you. Hold on.
Wait, excuse me. We all have pieces of paper. I'm purposely challenging.
We don't have pens.
Perfect. I'll make sure I get you a pen. Is there anyone working the room? Normally there's like a tech person?
There's a tech person outside or something.
Yeah. So let's make sure you have a pen. If someone has a pen to loan them. Can I get a tech person, please? All right. So now we've seen, in my mind, what's going to happen. And again, this is nothing personal. This is like
Just need some pens.
distraction.
Pens.
Oh, we don't have that.
Appreciate it. No worries.
Issues with people about where it is. We have to then have these other side conversations instead of the point of how many black people are in this room. I'm working. Rob's working. I don't know this young lady's name. Or I'm sorry if I am titling you. Working, and I personally invited out of the people who just happen to show up. And I'm assuming there's one and maybe another person who's of mixed ethnicity, where in the past could be North African or black. Why are there so few black people in this room? Why are there so few booths run by black people at this conference. And instead of staying there, we always go to, well, the education system, well, the history of humanity, well, no, let's stay here. So I have this survey for you all. If there's one piece of paper on your desk, all right? And so, something to think about, how do you identify? And you have your piece of paper on the side. This is the one that can be not anonymous. Like, how do you identify, right? And whether that's able-bodied, whether that's I'm an American, I have a citizenship, whether I'm college educated, whether I come from an educated family. All these things will influence potential. It's not predicted, it's not predetermined, right? But if you add up and you look at, well, people who are college educated with an American citizenship of European descent from families that are post-college educated, they tend to track certain directions.
Aren't you chasing the nurture versus nature conversation? That yes, I am born with innate physical instincts, etc., but I am nurtured to grow into the person that I become by my tribe, by my country, by my civilization, by my nuclear family. And if I live, and when you say European, I have to argue with you, because the Mongols invaded Europe in 1100.
So let's table that. Let's table that. Also the story of Genghis Khan, the Mongolian Empire, as well as the Aryan, those all come out of colonial British lore. But we'll get to that. And I'm not saying only Europeans are colonial. You can look in the Sino Wars, you can look in numerous conflicts in Africa. We're missing the point of colonialism. There was only one group of people that went out worldwide under divine right and imposed their way of thinking on literally every group they could find, murdered the people that didn't agree. And with the technological advancement of timing. But now we're getting into history. We're here to be focused on this subject. But I love what you're talking about. Like we need 4 hours for this. That's another thing. We have 30 minutes to talk about a topic where you have to go into the Mongols.
If you're a murderer, you're going to hang out with murderers. It doesn't matter what you are, you're going to try to find life.
We're all American though. We speak the same language. Normally when people break down culture, you define culture, language, food, clothing, ornamentation, these other things. We're all American. So how come when people see me, they don't see American? How come there's an idea that, well, if you're queer, you now are different? Why is there an idea that we don't have the same cultural background? When we see each other, we should be seeing the same.
Because we're individuals.
I'm going to have to ask that if the paper, please use your paper, because I have such a limited amount of time. And so the issue is not just our individual experience, but the 400 years of anti-blackness. So that when I go into a job interview, if I have these gold teeth in that are removable, a person's going to say, that's unprofessional. Your hair is unprofessional. I go in these tech firms, I see white kids in Tevas with dreads all the way down to their feet, wearing t-shirts. That's presentable? That's professional? It's cultural orientation that's been skewed because we all wear t-shirts. We all wear sandals. Why is one group celebrated for it or another stigmatized, right? But let's get back to the thing. All right, do any of you work at a majority black company? Anybody, hand up, anybody? Okay, now, is that interesting? The two black, me, I work with one. How does that happen, right? Do any of you work for a black CEO?
I did.
Okay, perfect. So you have 4 people. What percentage of your company is black? You can write this one down, because you may have to think about it. And you may say, I don't want to do that. I don't really look at black and white. Understand that when you go into an all-black space, you probably notice that you're the one white person there. And so I would guess that you do notice white and black at times. And maybe not. Keep in mind, I am doing a presentation for a group of people I've never met. There are going to be very distinctive individual and idiosyncratic experiences. So I'm not trying to label you all or tell you you are going to be able to do. And these are for general for conversation. Anything I say that prompts something, come see me at our booth. We're here for the next 3 days. And I have statistics, I have write-ups. I don't want to cloud y'all with that. I want emotion, I want human. I want to remember that when people sit in front of you and they tell you about racism, they are a person. When a person sits in front of you and they say, I am treated differently because I'm a woman, and dudes talk down to me and act like I shouldn't even be in the room, that you don't dismiss them because you just reinforced what she told you. As soon as you're like, yeah, but you are doing what the person's telling you. So I want to keep us there. We'll do the numbers, we'll do the statistics. What percentage of your company are women? Do any of you work for a woman-run company? Okay. And we had 1 or 2. How many people had hands up for a woman-run company? See up? 2? Okay, and we have at least 25 people in here? Okay. What percentage of your company is international? Like you have folks from overseas? Like, think about that. Do we all work in places that have international coworkers? Absolutely. Okay, so it's interesting, companies can figure out how to pay for visas, and I support people from all around the world being able to work all around the world. They can pay to bring people over and pay for visas, but they can't pay to do programs to make sure more women are there. They can't pay to make sure there are more people of African descent. And I know some people are troubled that I'm saying black people and not POC, and not just saying diversity. Note that to yourself, there's a reason. And come see me at the booth and we talk about why. All right?
But he's saying that a company would rather spend money to bring a foreigner in as opposed to get a POC locally that's got the same skills?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
I disagree.
Perfect. Oh, let me give you a piece of paper right there.
You don't have enough pieces of paper for me, trust me.
Oh, I love it. That means we gotta have a real meeting. If you find a pen.
I won't take it.
I'll join you, we'll do it together.
All right, excellent, excellent.
I don't disagree with that.
That's perfect, that's perfect. Do you have, sorry, what's your background?
I'm African.
No, I meant like, field of work.
IT.
Perfect, okay, awesome, good. I'd love to talk to you. Do any of you have a DEI chief? Like at your company? Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Our HR handles that, Dr. I'm VP of HR, but we have DEI subcommittee committees over various topics.
Anyone, DEI chief? One. Do you all have a general counsel or a head attorney? Everyone has one of those, right? Everyone probably has an accountant at their company, right? Yeah. So, it's interesting that when we think about DEI, it goes into social, it goes into morality, it goes into all these other things. Almost every business I speak to, if you have a DEI chief, you can't focus on that. We're doing growth, we're scaling. So what you're telling me is you think the best talent is in this limited pool of European descendants. You don't believe that you're missing out on the best talent by not purposely seeking people who aren't that. That you're not purposely looking for women. You assume then that the best talent is in the pool of men, or that somehow randomly the least represented person will tumble their way into your office and you'll find them. So why isn't DEI right next to your lawyer or right next to your accountant to help scale your business, to help you grow, to help you do marketing, to help you understand that the world is what percentage European? So how much money are you missing? This is business. Now we get into the lawsuits you can avoid. If any of you have worked at a company to where it finally comes out that they've had a 10-year history of mistreatment of women and unfair labor practices, we're in 3 different government compliance issues right there. How much is that costing them? So you can look at it as a moral point of view and say we should do this, but you can also say as a business person, we are shorting ourselves by not having diversity officers, by not recruiting people of various backgrounds, by not having diversity of thought. Because we're working on problem solving. A lot of you, I'm sure, work with engineers, you work with people that are very hands-on. One of the issues with problem solving is everyone's learned the same technique. They actually don't solve the problem quicker because they're not taking different perspectives. When you have a variety of perspectives, you're going to get solved quicker. So when we get into the statistics part, companies with diverse, from the beginning, diverse corporate structure, executive suite, C-suite, and ownership scale faster. They grow faster, and over time, we notice that the more diverse companies generate more money, period. So why at Microsoft is it still only 5% black? What's their problem? They don't have the money to initiate the programs? People will say, oh, I think we're running out of time. People will say, no, the issue, the issue is the pipeline. We don't know where to find them. Historically black universities, really easy. How often, did you even call Howard University? Did you call Morgan State? No, you didn't. So you can't use that excuse. Oh, the problem is education, the STEM programs. Interesting. At your company, what are you doing? Why do we keep saying the problem's there? What are we doing? And so I want to say directly, the biggest problem is I don't believe you as the black guy talking when people come in and explain it. And another problem is going to be, I don't care. It doesn't affect me, but it does. If you read Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire, he says one of the most destructive elements of colonialism is that it dehumanizes the oppressor. It's not just that the oppressor, the marginalized, or the groups that people think need help have been dehumanized. It's that if you're able to do that to people, what does it do to your humanity?
If you go into a room, you're working in an office, and you don't happen to know that it's 9 men talking and 1 woman sitting there trying to speak and no one is allowing that person to speak, that's a loss of humanity that you don't want to recognize that person's humanity. That when they tell you their experience, you say, no, but Jeannie, you know it's probably something else. How would you know? The experts speak it. That assumed expertise is part of the problem, right? And no one will have that conversation. I've done DEI for however many years, and I started in the other direction, where it's like, let me meet people where they are. I don't want to push people out. You don't get any movement if you scare people right off the top. You don't get movement either way. So now I'm being honest, and I'm letting people know that after a decade of doing this stuff, the same thing almost every company I go to. And if they get past the discussion part, they're like, yeah, I love this idea. Cool, where's the money to implement it? Oh, well, our budget didn't. You just paid $2,000 to send so-and-so on a trip to do nothing, to make content. That won't help you. But you can't spend the money to bring in an expert. You can't spend the money to actually hire a person as an executive that works with us day to day. We don't take the time to say this is a business issue, right? And so on a simplistic level, like again, I can get into the actual like, here are the numbers, here are the reports, here are the issues and the number of like actual STEM programs. Here are the number of the percentages of college graduates that are women or black in engineering. Because they meet the same social percentage. So we should be able to find women in engineering. We should be able to find black people in engineering. We can get into the statistics historically of how companies have labor in this. But I like to keep it simple. At your company, what are they doing? What are you doing? When you hear people make jokes or make certain statements about ethnic groups, about queer people, about women, do you step up? Do you push your boss and say, you know what, I won't work where there's no diversity. I'm gonna take my talent to where they respect talent of all backgrounds. Most people won't do that. It's a heavy ask, you know? And so I start there with, are we willing to sacrifice? Are we willing to have the difficult conversations? Are we willing to pull up on our manager and say, you realize when you said that thing about the thing, that's offensive to certain folks. When the manager's like, well, it shouldn't be. It is. It is. And if you keep doing it, I'll report it. That's my starting point. If we want to get anything I've said and get more specific, that's where we start. But do you have questions? And I want to avoid comments right now. Comments are for the paper and for later. Come see me at the booth so we can have a 40-minute conversation, an hour-and-a-half long conversation. People study this stuff for decades. We will not solve the problem in 10 minutes. But, sure.
You talk about European white colonialism, and I get it, and I understand that that's a reality. At the same time, you don't talk about, and you threw the Mongols out there, and I don't believe that that is lore. That's a real thing. Poland was invaded by the Mongols in the 11th century, and they took over everything up to Germany. Why don't we talk about inclusion as opposed to addressing this discussion of diversity and the fact that we've segregated people by calling it Black Lives Matter or Blue Lives Matter or why we don't...
I need to stop you. We haven't separated anyone. I have nothing to do with how white folks came up with whiteness or blackness. I've had to deal with it. I have to deal with, when I go into spaces, people make assumptions about me that I did not create. I wish racism was eradicated by not talking about it. That's not how it works. I wish abusers just naturally calm down. That's not how it works. And you have to have Black Lives Matter because people don't listen to us. People don't care about us. We get murdered in the street and people care more about saving the whales. But we should save the whales. But we should also have concern for our fellow Americans. And I'm not concerned with the Mongols. The Mongols aren't a threat to me. Unfortunately, white America is a threat to me and people that look like me. I've traveled through Florida, Texas, Colorado, Maine, New York, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Arizona, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Rhode Island, Delaware. I've seen Confederate flags everywhere.
Like Cali?
Where?
California?
Yeah, been up and down California. Just there in Monterey like 2 months ago. So I travel doing this. I talk to people all over. So I get different perspectives. When you're in California and you have a majority Southeast Asian and Spanish-speaking population, diversity looks different when you're in certain parts of San Jose. But the difference is that population of Asians makes more money than white folks. So when people say POC, that population of Asian technologists does not have the same experience as the technologists in Boston, but the same, that's black. or the same experience as a queer woman in Alabama. So you can't lump it all together. But yeah, so I'm not so concerned with the theory of, and in history, who was bad. And I'm not saying all white folks are bad. I'm not saying America is bad. What I'm saying is that the colonial process leads to hegemony. It leads to the imposition of control. It leads to violence being used as a tool. And threatening my job because I speak up about racism is a tool of violence. Because I lose my job, I can't pay for a house, then what happens, right? And so fitting in as a marginalized community member is one of the most important things, and assimilating, that's violent. I have to lose myself. And again, this is basic Marxist stuff of like, in order to fit into a capitalist society, you must lose who you are. And we now see in a majority culture, people want to remove that. People are saying to the young people, be yourselves at work. You don't have to wear a suit and tie every day. You don't have to shave. You don't have to look like your grandparents look. Are they telling me that? It looks like you need to look like your grandparents look to be a CEO. Any other, so more questions? Yes, sir.
So I interviewed probably hundreds of technologists over the last couple of years, just thinking of adding people to my team. And just as you're speaking, it occurs to me I don't think I've seen an African American candidate. I'm not in charge of sourcing the candidate pool. Recruiters bring that to me, but as you say, that it's incumbent on me in some ways that I obviously don't hire any black people if I don't interview any of them. Okay. How do I like outside of kind of calling Howard University, how do I find technologists in our space?
So there are a couple of things you can do. One is, unfortunately, you're going to have to call Howard University, you're going to have to call Spelman, you're going to have to call Morehouse, you're going to have to call any person you know who's black that went to those schools, make arrangements with alumni committees, engineering committees. There's a National Black Engineering Society or Association, there are Women in Tech associations, and what I suggest to companies is use third parties that care about diversity. A major issue I run into is that we do outsource components of our businesses. So I'm speaking to a business that's large. If they have more than 300 employees, like I worked at BarkBox, which is a publicly traded company. They went public in the past 2 years. They have international people, over 400 people. So they have a lot of moving parts. When you say hiring, they're like, yeah, we outsource this part, we outsource that part. Well, then speak to the people you're working with, and if they don't care about diversity, don't work with them. But I'm also old school. I'm looking at it like, if you don't give people money, they will change how they behave. And so use your money as power. If you want to hire somebody and they are, hateful towards women, don't hire them. And then they'll learn I can't do that. And other people will learn, well, if you're overtly racist and sexist and anti-queer, you don't get work. But as of now, it's kind of like if you reinforce historical elements of patriarchy and heteronormativity, it keeps you in a job. The number of people that say ridiculously offensive things and they get a new job afterwards making more money, right, it's present. You see it. So I can also give you some actual names of headhunting companies and organizations that help. Because when you look at graduation rates, there are black engineers coming out, there are black computer scientists coming out, there are black data analysts coming out, there are women in these fields. And also in tech, you're specifically in a pretty science and engineering heavy background. But people don't remember that most tech firms have marketing people, they have advertising people, they have copywriters, they have tons of people that aren't engineers. And so whenever folks are like, well, tech is engineering, there aren't black people in tech, there aren't women in tech, that's not the issue. The issue is effort, the issue is concern.
Just a note, it's 10:56.
Sweet. Okay, so any last questions? Yes, sir.
Oh yeah, I hope you don't mind me asking this question. It might be a little sensitive, but what does your company do?
Well, as a diversity and equity person, I speak with other companies and try to help them insulate the members of marginalized communities that are there. So normally when I go to companies and we do our survey, we have to do like where are you now, where do you want to go, how do we get there?
But black land ownership, what is that?
Yes. We encourage people of African descent to purchase more land, and we're here to combat the historical marginalization of racism.
Okay, you answered the question. That's what your company does?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we utilize technology to that effect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, speak for our organization in general, we've taken a very serious approach with the team. We had someone, an outside consultant, and the first step we did was having that initial assessment to see where we are, where the breakdown, where our population is, and taking a look at how we can improve our communication putting a lot of responsibilities on the employees themselves to get involved in committees like myself, look at different areas of recruiting, whether it be training and education. As we're going through the process, what would you describe are probably the three big hurdles to developing a successful DNI program?
We need to finish to get the next group in because we're about out of time. Come see me up front and I'll give you an idea. And my work's very tailored to each company I've worked with. So I've done Department of Education, that was one thing. I've worked with a blockchain company of only 12 people, that was another thing. I've worked with BarkBox, international, publicly traded company, that was another thing. So I really would want to know more about what you're specifically doing and to think about your needs and what's important to you. Because it's not a one size fits all. It's not me coming in saying, here's how you fix your problem. And again, I purposely said challenging things here. I purposely have left room for interpretation for you all to assume what I think about things. I haven't said a whole lot about what I actually think. All right? And so I'm encouraging you to come speak to me. And I've implied some things, but I'm not big on implication. I'm big on let's use language, let's use vocabulary, let's get into taxonomy nomenclature. We have a booth, you'll see us in the orange, we'll be doing raffles. Again, I know it's challenging, I appreciate y'all participating, and I'm here. I love speaking to people, like you can tell. Come talk to me. Oh, and for the anonymous pieces of paper, if you can leave them on the table, I want to consider the thoughts and think about how I can better present in the future. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Guys, we'll be starting the next session in about 5 minutes.
I appreciate it.
The next session is a digital tsunami.
4 countries and too many states to think about.
Basically, how the digital tsunami, daily digital tsunami,
we can talk about that.
Impacts society.
Because I have friends in Brazil running the same thing. I have friends in Israel. I have friends in.
I haven't done South America, so I can't tell you how that would set on Europe.
Yeah, speaking with a woman and a guy in Poland, woman in the Netherlands, woman in Germany, Spain, UK. They got the same issues. Colonialism is rampant.
Oh yeah, I don't disagree.
Excuse me, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, if you can leave your anonymous parts, so I can look.
Wish I had a pen, another one.
Yeah, I'll come meet you in like 2 minutes.
We are doing our DNI program. And we have transition rate to our people, so I was going to be something. I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, I'll come find you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Sorry, let me let some more people talk.
Yeah, and I'm Black Land Ownership on IG.
Okay, I got you.
So thank y'all. Did anyone leave papers that I can pick up?
Come see it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Chris. Yeah, we're like halfway into the trade show, like 3 something. You'll see us. We have the orange one.
Yeah, can't miss it.
Yeah.
All right, man, appreciate it. See you again. How you doing?
That was inspiring.
I'm glad you're here.
That was inspiring.
You know, from my point of view, the problem is where is the power? Where is the social dominance? It doesn't matter.
You're not in it.
It doesn't matter what's the color, the gender, anything. And that's a human fact. And the only way to change that is not by imposing anything, it's by education.
We have a booth. I would challenge that.
Yeah.
I would challenge that.
I will visit you.
Yeah. Come visit.
Because you can't impose anything at the end of the day.
I agree with the part of you can't impose it.
The only way to do is to grow the society the right way.
So
how do you stop machismo?
Have you, like when you deal with plants though, you have to remove some weeds sometimes, or sometimes you have to prune
I understand.
in order to have the nutrients.
But you don't go to the root.
No, right. You don't want to destroy the human connectivity.
Is to grow the society.
Yeah.
And it's clearly explained in the Yuval Harari Sapiens book. It's a really easy and great book to how the human structure works and how everything is just an idea, how everything is just an imagination of how the society should work, right?
Yeah.
Because that's it at the end.
So that becomes a part of the question of, in a perfect world, would that room have looked any different to the people who were in it? For me, yeah. So if I was in this room, I would want to see people like Rob, I'd want to see Sarah, I'd want to see my friends who are
of all backgrounds. But there were people in this room who would have been just fine if it stayed the same because it was people just like them.
Yeah.
And so when we think about the
They
world
get together, or we get together, right?
and as humans, though, we are the input. There is no divider past that. So how do we understand that? How do we get to the point of what are my blockades? What if I put up so that I don't see this woman as human, so I don't have the same conversation?
Only if you grow up by doesn't caring about that, you won't see that.
I think that create a lot of our own insecurities or what stops us from actually seeing the universe.
Yeah.
So, and it's building up the individual to grow society in other directions.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, if you get a chance, I don't want to interrupt their stuff. Come by the booth. I love talking about this stuff. And where are you from originally? Yeah, and the U.S. has such a unique history in the sense of how Africans were brought here, the indigenous built up. But we also have, the discussion gets confused for Americans when we start bringing in people from Central and South America.
Another thing, boundaries are imaginary. You said we are all Americans. That's imaginary. We're human beings.
I agree.
Yeah.
But
So,
that passport affects people.
It's only a society thing.
I agree.
How do you change the society?
And now, I don't know if you were here at the beginning. I was saying how it's all a social construct, but once people believe it, it becomes real. And in America, people get confused and they're like, are you black or Dominican? And it's like, one's a nationality, one is a false construction. And if you are from certain areas, you've probably been mixed with who knows how many different groups of communities. And you see that when you go through Central and South America, the diversity of expression, whether you're in Colombia.
And still division exists, and it's very strong.
Yeah.
Why? Not because of the color of your skin or your, I don't know, your past, your ancestors, because you don't have the power.
And we'll talk about that because you do see colorism. And that now you have more indigenous people in South America who are getting into government, but there's a whole time period to where, you know, Vicente Fox, you go through the leaders of all those countries, they were as European as possible. So, I don't, but we'll go. Yeah. But I appreciate the combo.
Let's talk.
Yeah, let's definitely talk.
Testing 1, 2.